In the annals of history, few acts of treachery ignite such profound fury as a bullet aimed at a nation's burgeoning hope, especially when the betrayer is an outsider. Imagine a continent, vast and diverse, rising as one, united in an unprecedented wave of condemnation against a single name, Michael Langley. This is the searing tale of a man who tried to extinguish a flame, only to be consumed by the wildfire of Africa's scorn. If you believe in the power of unity and the resilience of a people, make sure to subscribe to our channel right now and join us on this extraordinary journey. Burkina Faso, a nation of immense spirit and profound resilience, had long grappled with the relentless shadows of insecurity, its very soul bruised by the escalating grip of extremist violence and the persistent echoes of instability. The daily lives of its people were marked by a pervasive sense of dread, as communities grappled with displacement and the constant threat of brutal attacks, each one tearing further at the delicate fabric of society. Amidst this profound despair, a palpable yearning for a genuine and lasting transformation swelled across the land, a desperate cry for a leader brave enough to confront the encroaching darkness and restore dignity to a suffering nation. The political landscape preceding this period was marred by a perceived inertia, with successive governments struggling to effectively stem the tide of terror that threatened to consume the country entirely. Promises often remained unfulfilled, and the populace grew increasingly disillusioned, their faith in traditional leadership dwindling with each passing day. This pervasive sense of abandonment created a fertile ground for dissent, paving the way for radical shifts as people searched for genuine solutions, no longer content with rhetoric that failed to address their most fundamental needs for safety and stability. The air was thick with anticipation, a desperate hope for true change. It was into this volatile and despairing environment that Captain Ibrahim Traoré emerged, not from the halls of political power, but from the very crucible of conflict, a young officer who had witnessed firsthand the immense suffering of his people. His military background, coupled with a reputation for unwavering courage and a pragmatic approach to leadership, quickly garnered him significant respect among the disillusioned ranks and the yearning public. He spoke with a refreshing candor, promising direct action against the forces of terror and a renewed focus on national sovereignty, resonating deeply with a populace tired of the status quo. Traoré's ascent to interim leadership was met with a complex mix of apprehension and cautious optimism, both within Burkina Faso and across the wider African continent. While some viewed his rise as a disruption to established norms, many more saw him as a symbol of newfound African agency, a leader committed to charting an independent course free from external manipulation. His strong stance on protecting national interests and empowering his own people struck a chord with nations grappling with similar challenges, fostering a quiet admiration that quickly began to blossom into powerful, Pan-African solidarity. His vision extended beyond mere military victories. Traoré articulated a profound aspiration for a Burkina Faso that was truly sovereign, economically self-reliant, and fiercely proud, inspiring a sense of renewed purpose among his countrymen. He envisioned a nation where its resources benefited its own people, where justice prevailed, and where the echoes of colonial interference finally faded into history. This powerful narrative of self-determination and dignity resonated far beyond Burkina Faso's borders, attracting the attention and quiet support of leaders and citizens across the African continent who shared similar aspirations for genuine liberation. Thus, Ibrahim Traoré became more than just a leader in Burkina Faso. He rapidly transformed into a powerful emblem of a new era of African leadership, one characterized by resolute self-belief and an unwavering commitment to defending national sovereignty. His audacious stance against the internal threats, coupled with his clear assertion of independence on the international stage, began to consolidate a burgeoning continental admiration. His very presence on the global stage was a statement, signaling a potential shift in power dynamics, and awakening a continent to the possibility of reclaiming its narrative, free from external impositions. Amidst the rising tide of African self-determination, there lingered shadowy figures, often operating from the peripheries of international power, whose interests were inextricably linked to maintaining the existing global order, one that sometimes benefited from the perceived instability or dependence of African nations. It was within these clandestine networks that the name Michael Langley began to surface, a figure shrouded in an aura of calculated menace and a history of involvement in sensitive, often destabilizing, foreign operations. He was not merely a mercenary, but a sophisticated operative whose allegiances were to interests far removed from the genuine progress and prosperity of the African continent. Langley's motivations were complex, likely a cocktail of financial gain, a deeply ingrained belief in the superiority of external influence, and perhaps an ideological adherence to maintaining global power imbalances. He embodied the remnants of an old order, viewing emerging leaders like Traoré not as harbingers of progress, but as dangerous disruptors to a system from which he and his patrons had long profited. His disdain for genuine African autonomy was thinly veiled, viewing the continent as a chessboard for external maneuverings rather than a vibrant tapestry of sovereign nations, each with its own inherent right to self-determination. Whispers of Langley's shadowy presence had preceded him, tied to various destabilizing efforts in other parts of the world, making him a personification of the very external interference that many African nations were striving to shed. His methods were often subtle, weaving webs of intrigue and exploiting existing grievances to create chaos. But his ultimate goal was always the same: to undermine leaders who dared to challenge the status quo. He operated with a chilling detachment, viewing human lives as mere pawns in a larger, geopolitical game, devoid of any genuine empathy for the suffering he inflicted. As Ibrahim Traoré's influence grew and his commitment to Burkina Faso's sovereignty became increasingly clear, it inevitably drew the malevolent attention of individuals like Langley and the interests they represented. Traoré's vision of self-reliance and his willingness to forge new partnerships, independent of traditional hegemonic powers, represented a direct threat to the established order that individuals like Langley were paid to protect. The very essence of Traoré's leadership, rooted in genuine popular support and a fierce desire for national dignity, stood in stark opposition to the clandestine operations Langley was accustomed to orchestrating. Langley's machinations were not born of genuine concern for Burkina Faso, but rather from a cold, calculated assessment of how Traoré's rise threatened external agendas. He likely saw Traoré as an inconvenient obstacle, a disruptor who needed to be neutralized before his independent path could inspire other nations to follow suit. His methods were ruthless and devoid of any moral compass, driven solely by the strategic objectives of his shadowy benefactors. He represented the darkest side of geopolitical maneuvering, where the lives and aspirations of entire nations were sacrificed on the altar of external power. Thus, Michael Langley stepped into the narrative of Burkina Faso not as a force for good, but as a harbinger of ill intent, a living embodiment of the historical burdens and external pressures that African nations have long struggled to cast off. His presence was a stark reminder that the fight for true sovereignty was not just against internal threats, but also against the insidious machinations of those who sought to maintain control from afar. His very existence on the African stage represented a profound challenge to the continent's burgeoning aspirations for true freedom and self-determination, setting the stage for a truly dramatic confrontation. The air in Ouagadougou, usually bustling with vibrant life, hung heavy with anticipation as Ibrahim Traoré prepared for a crucial public appearance, a moment meant to reinforce the unity and resolve of his struggling nation. Security was heightened, but the insidious nature of the threat meant that danger could lurk anywhere, even within the closest circles. It was in this charged atmosphere that Michael Langley, a man whose heart was devoid of empathy and whose soul was sold to the highest bidder, executed his heinous plot, a moment designed to plunge Burkina Faso back into the abyss of chaos. The world held its breath, unaware of the insidious act unfolding. The assassination attempt was meticulously planned, a cold and calculated act of treachery designed to not only eliminate a leader but to shatter the burgeoning hope he embodied for an entire continent. Details remained shrouded in a deliberate veil of security, but the brazenness of the attack sent shockwaves far beyond the dusty streets of Ouagadougou. It was a direct assault on the very idea of African sovereignty, a chilling reminder that external forces still felt empowered to dictate the fate of nations, even at the cost of human life and continental stability. The echoes of the moment resonated with chilling clarity. In the chaotic moments immediately following the attempt, a wave of profound uncertainty and fear swept through the nation, mirroring the anguish that many had felt during previous periods of instability. Initial reports were fragmented, sowing confusion and anxiety among a populace desperately clinging to the fragile promise of security. The very thought that their chosen leader, a symbol of their renewed dignity, could be targeted in such a ruthless manner ignited a fierce mixture of shock, anger, and a desperate plea for clarity amidst the gathering storm of uncertainty. The future of Burkina Faso hung precariously in the balance. However, the rapid and decisive response of Traoré's security detail, coupled with a remarkable stroke of fortune, ensured that the treacherous plot did not achieve its deadly objective. The news of Traoré's survival, initially whispered, then shouted from rooftops, ignited an explosion of relief and an outpouring of fervent support across Burkina Faso. What was intended as a catastrophic blow became an unexpected rallying cry, transforming a moment of profound vulnerability into an undeniable testament to his resilience and, by extension, the unwavering spirit of his nation. The betrayal had backfired spectacularly, forging a stronger bond. The immediate aftermath was also characterized by a swift and uncompromising investigation, swiftly identifying key operatives involved and, crucially, pointing towards the shadowy figure of Michael Langley as the architect of this heinous act. The revelation of his involvement ignited a fierce inferno of righteous indignation, particularly as his background and associations with destabilizing foreign interests came to light. The mask of plausible deniability was ripped away, exposing the ugly face of external interference that had plagued the continent for generations, fueling a powerful and unified condemnation. This brazen act of attempted assassination, orchestrated by Michael Langley, became a pivotal moment, transforming the narrative of Burkina Faso's struggle into a symbol of wider African resilience against foreign meddling. It was not merely an attack on Traoré, but an affront to the collective aspirations of a continent striving for genuine self-determination. The shock quickly morphed into a hardened resolve, forging an unyielding unity that would cast Langley, and all he represented, into the deepest abyss of African scorn, a pariah in the eyes of an entire continent. The news of the assassination attempt on Ibrahim Traoré, and the subsequent revelation of Michael Langley's central role in the plot, ignited a colossal firestorm of indignation that swept across the African continent with unprecedented speed and intensity. It was not merely a diplomatic incident, but a deeply personal affront to the collective dignity and burgeoning self-determination of nations long subjected to external manipulation. From the bustling markets of Lagos to the quiet villages of the Sahel, a unified cry of outrage echoed, transcending borders and uniting diverse peoples in a shared condemnation of such a blatant act of aggression. African leaders, often cautious in their international pronouncements, found a rare and powerful common voice, issuing condemnations that were unequivocal in their denouncement of the attempted coup and the foreign involvement it represented. Statements from regional bodies like ECOWAS and the African Union, traditionally marked by diplomatic restraint, now carried an uncharacteristic vehemence, reflecting the depth of the continent's anger. They saw in Langley's actions a dangerous echo of a colonial past, a crude attempt to undermine legitimate African leadership and dictate the continent's future from afar, further fueling their collective outrage. For the African populace, Langley became more than just a name. He rapidly transformed into the embodiment of all that they had struggled against for centuries: the insidious forces of exploitation, the clandestine efforts to sow discord, and the arrogant belief that African lives and sovereignty were disposable. His face, once perhaps unknown, became synonymous with betrayal, a symbol of the destructive legacy of foreign interference that had stunted the continent's growth and perpetuated cycles of violence. He was not just despised, but reviled, his name invoked with a potent mix of anger and a rallying cry for self-emancipation. Social media platforms across Africa exploded with impassioned messages, hashtags, and vivid imagery, transforming into a spontaneous arena of collective defiance against Langley and his shadowy patrons. Citizens from every walk of life, young and old, educated and unlettered, shared their outrage, articulating a powerful narrative of Pan-African solidarity against external aggression. This digital uprising amplified the voices of millions, creating an undeniable wave of public opinion that demonstrated the depth of the continent's collective pain and its unyielding resolve to protect its hard-won sovereignty. The condemnation extended beyond mere words. It manifested in a tangible hardening of resolve across African capitals against any form of foreign interference, covert or overt. Nations that had once been hesitant to challenge traditional alliances now found a renewed courage, inspired by Traoré's resilience and the unifying indignation against Langley's treachery. This incident became a catalyst, strengthening calls for greater regional cooperation, enhanced security partnerships among African states, and a more robust defense of national interests against any external attempts to dictate their internal affairs, ushering in a new era of assertiveness. Thus, Michael Langley, in his hubris and his calculated attempt to destabilize a burgeoning hope, unwittingly became the catalyst for an unprecedented wave of African unity, and a symbol of everything the continent stood against. His name, once perhaps whispered in clandestine circles, now carried the heavy weight of widespread contempt, forever etched in the collective memory as the embodiment of external malice. He became the pariah of a continent, despised by all of Africa, a chilling cautionary tale of what happens when external forces dare to threaten the sovereign will of a united people yearning for self-determination. The profound and widespread condemnation from across Africa rendered Michael Langley an international pariah, a figure utterly isolated and devoid of any legitimate standing. His carefully constructed network of influence crumbled under the weight of continental fury, as former associates distanced themselves, wary of being tainted by association with such a universally reviled figure. His very name became anathema, a stark warning to any who might consider similar acts of audacious interference in African affairs. The moral ground he thought he stood on had utterly vanished, replaced by an insurmountable wave of scorn and disgust. The consequences for Langley extended far beyond mere reputational damage. His ability to operate in the shadows was severely curtailed, his effectiveness as a clandestine operative permanently crippled by the sheer force of Africa's unified outrage. Governments that might have once covertly utilized his services now saw him as a liability, too toxic to be associated with, even in the darkest corners of geopolitical maneuvering. His once potent tools of manipulation and destabilization were rendered useless, his identity irrevocably tied to an act that galvanized an entire continent against him, leaving him without refuge or influence. This incident, born of betrayal, paradoxically served to strengthen Ibrahim Traoré's standing, both within Burkina Faso and across Africa, cementing his image as a resilient and courageous leader who defied death and external machinations. The attempted assassination, instead of weakening him, became a powerful testament to his unwavering resolve and the justice of his cause. His survival, often hailed as miraculous, galvanized public support even further, proving that true leadership could withstand even the most heinous attacks, transforming a moment of profound vulnerability into an undeniable display of strength and divine protection. The legacy of Michael Langley's failed attempt became a stark and enduring lesson for Africa, a powerful reminder of the imperative to remain vigilant against all forms of external interference, while simultaneously reinforcing the continent's inherent strength when united. It solidified a collective commitment to self-reliance, inspiring nations to invest more deeply in their own security, their own economic development, and their own diplomatic pathways, independent of traditional external patrons. The wound of betrayal, though painful, forged a stronger, more cohesive sense of shared destiny among African nations, transforming adversity into unwavering determination. In the long arc of history, Michael Langley will be remembered not for any perceived strategic triumph, but as a cautionary tale, a symbol of arrogant overreach and the profound miscalculation of underestimating African agency. His name will forever be synonymous with a failed act of treachery that, rather than achieving its destructive aim, inadvertently ignited an unprecedented wave of continental unity and resolve. He became the epitome of what Africa had to overcome, a historical marker of the resistance against insidious forces seeking to control its destiny, cementing his place in the annals of infamy. Ultimately, the story of Michael Langley and his failed assassination attempt against Ibrahim Traoré is a powerful narrative of resilience, unity, and the enduring strength of a continent determined to forge its own future, free from the shackles of external manipulation. It is a testament to the fact that even the darkest acts of betrayal can inadvertently become catalysts for profound solidarity, reminding the world that the spirit of self-determination, once ignited, cannot be easily extinguished. Africa, unified in its scorn for Langley, continues its unwavering march towards a future defined by its own terms, a powerful and inspiring example for all. If this story of unity and resilience moved you, if you felt the power of a continent's collective spirit, then please show your support by giving this video a heartfelt like. Share this narrative with anyone who needs to hear about courage in the face of betrayal, and leave a comment below sharing your thoughts. Your engagement empowers us to bring you more incredible stories like this. And of course, if you haven't already, make sure to subscribe to our channel for more journeys into the heart of human determination and global events. Thank you for watching, and remember, strength often lies in unity.